My name is Noel Spiegel, and I'm the president of the Jewish Communal Fund, and I would like to welcome all of you here today and thank you for taking the time to join us. As some of you may know, the Jewish Communal Fund is the largest Jewish donor-advised fund and one of the largest non-commercial funds in the country. We are now managing 3,200 funds with over $1.4 billion under management. In the fiscal year that just ended, we distributed grants totaling approximately $300 million to thousands of charities in every sector. Before we begin today, I'd like to briefly introduce some of the Jewish Communal Fund staff who are with us today, as well as some of the trustees, and then give you an overview of our services and how we can be a resource to you and your clients. With us here today is Sue Dickman, our CEO, in the back. Standing behind her is Beth Vogelanter, our COO. The chair of our executive committee, Zoya Rains, is off to my right. And we have Ellen Israelson, who many of you know, to thank for putting this program together, as well as her very able staff, Tamar Schneider and Bryce Diamond. Also we have with us today is Melody Marchfield, and please feel free at the conclusion of the program to talk to any of us about how the Jewish Communal Fund may be of assistance to you and your clients. As you may know, the Jewish Communal Fund is a public charity that facilitates charitable giving through a tax vehicle known as a donor-advised fund. The donor-advised fund functions like a charitable bank account and makes charitable giving more organized and efficient. We are now in our 43rd year, and we have a substantial track record of excellent service and prudent management. We streamlined charitable giving through a cost-effective and convenient manner by handling all record keeping. You no longer have to keep track of receipts or figure out where they are. They're all available on our online system in one convenient place in your account. We recently totally redesigned our website, and it's secure, it's totally upgraded, and it gives all of our donors online access to their account. In fact, as importantly, I believe an overwhelming majority of our donors now do all of their grants online and do all of their business online. So it's extremely convenient, and if I can do it, anybody can. We offer great flexibility. A tax deduction is taken when the gift is made to the Jewish Communal Fund, and the donor decides the timetable for making the grant. Unlike a private foundation, there is no annual minimum distribution requirement. The donor totally decides when and how and over what period of time to use their funds. We make it possible for you to assist your clients in making investment recommendations for the charitable assets in their fund. And our menu of investment options is fairly large. Also, charitable assets in the donor-advised fund grow tax-free. Our private clients, and those are folks with minimum balances of $1 million, enjoy enhanced investment options, including a wide range of asset classes and the ability to suggest the addition of investment managers not currently on our platform. At the client's request, we can vet you to manage their fund. Fund holders have a great deal of freedom to support the charities they care about. Grants can be recommended to any sectarian or non-sectarian IRS-qualified public charity. We accept many assets: cash, appreciated securities, bonds, complex assets, and real property. We also accept assets from private foundations and charitable lead remainder trusts. If you are interested in learning more about this, please join us at our October 28th program for CLE and CPE on gift giving of non-traditional assets. We can help protect your client's privacy and maximize confidentiality. Unlike a private foundation, the Jewish Communal Fund reports grant-making contributions in the aggregate. Individual fund holders are not subject to public disclosure. We can also be used as a foundation alternative or together with a foundation. If your clients are looking to connect with a network of Jewish philanthropists, then the Jewish Communal Fund is the place for them. In addition to being the largest Jewish donor-advised fund in the nation, a portion of our fees are earmarked for our endowment, the Special Gifts Fund, which makes grants to Jewish charities in the New York community and a significant annual gift to the UJA Federation of New York. Finally, the Jewish Communal Fund does more than facilitate charitable giving. We also educate. We can help your clients achieve greater impact with their philanthropy through a wealth of customized resources. And resources are not solely for clients. As you experience today, advisors enjoy educational opportunities and networking. Now, you're in a position as advisors where you're trusted advisors for your clients. And when I was dealing with clients and somebody would ask me to introduce my clients to them, the first thing I would always ask is, why should I trust you? Why should I take my credibility and transfer it over to somebody else? Because the only thing that could happen is my client will be upset with me. I think the Jewish Communal Fund is totally the opposite. Many of you sitting in this room have clients with Jewish Communal Fund accounts. And you know, and speak to your colleagues who have clients with Jewish Communal Fund accounts, you do know how good our staff actually is, how we do take care of our clients, and how we do protect your reputation. In fact, I think the only risk you run is your client finding out the Jewish Communal Fund, about the Jewish Communal Fund, and you didn't tell them. Then they're going to say, why didn't you let me know about this great opportunity? So we hope we have the opportunity to help you serve your clients, and our staff and trustees, as I said before, are here to answer any questions that you have. I'd now like to introduce our moderator, Veronica Dagher. I now got her name right. I got it wrong before. Called her Virginia. So Veronica is a wealth management reporter at the Wall Street Journal. She is also host of the Wall Street Journal's Wealth Wednesday podcast, appears frequently on the Fox Business Network and WSJ.com video. She's won fellowships from the Lilly Foundation and National Press Foundation and received her MBA from Fordham University. She's an active volunteer at Crossroads Community Services, a homeless shelter for women, and has sat on several not-for-profit boards. Veronica?
Thanks for that intro, Noel. I appreciate it. Well, we're all very excited about this topic of women and wealth. This is a growing field. This is an important field for advisors, for women. The opportunity is vast. More women are gaining control of more assets. They stand to do so more so down the road. They're feeling more empowered about their wealth, too. They're also turning to their advisors more for guidance and direction, and they're looking to all of you for advice, so you play a crucial role. So we're very excited to be here. We want to talk about the growth opportunity in the field today. We also want to talk about how advisors can get better at doing their jobs and serving this really important market. So without further ado, we have an exciting panel, all of great experts. I'd like to introduce them, starting with Carol Pepper. She is the CEO of Pepper International, and that's a family office located in New York City. She's got over 25 years experience in the wealth management industry. Notable, she's the co-author of The 7 Pearls of Financial Wisdom, A Woman's Guide to Enjoying Wealth and Power. If you haven't read the book, I suggest you read it. It's a great book. Next, we've got Tyler Reiff. We're thrilled to have a gentleman on the panel. Very thrilled to see some gentlemen in the audience as well. He's the portfolio manager at U.S. Trust, and that's with Bank of America Private Wealth Management. And he works with both institutional clients and private clients. And he's a portfolio manager on the socially innovative investing strategy team. He's got a real interest in philanthropy. And next, of course, we've got Carolann Grieve. She's a senior family wealth advisor at GenSpring Family Offices, and she works with high net worth families on estate planning and other issues. She's a long-standing member of the firm's family education and governance working groups. She's also chairs the GenSpring's Women and Wealth Initiative. So we're happy to welcome them all. Thank you. So first, I want to start out laying the landscape. Carol, how big is this wealth opportunity, women and wealth?
Well, Veronica, it is huge. Just to give you a few little statistics, there are over 200,000 individuals around the world that have over $30 million in net worth. In the United States alone, we are projected to see $16 trillion transferring hands in the next 10 years, $16 trillion. Now, the average age of high net worth individuals in the United States is 59 or 60 years old. So this is not only happening soon, it's happening right now. And we often hear, those of us in the industry, about this transfer to the next generation, quote unquote, but we fail to remember that mom, on average, lives 10 years longer than dad. So this is not a transfer to the next generation. This is a transfer to women. $16 trillion are going into the hands of women in the United States over the next 10 years. That's a big number. Now, these women are very different than their husbands in a lot of ways, and we're going to get into that on the panel today. But one of the things to remember is that many of these widows are firing their wealth advisors because over the years they have felt disrespected, they have felt like they were not listened to, and I see heads nodding in the audience. And so it's time for the industry to wake up and really start to treat these women as the wealth holders that they are.
Great points. Tyler, why should advisors care about it? Carol brought out some of that. I want to hear from a guy's perspective.
From a guy's perspective. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and I appreciate it. Thank you to the JCF. I would say that people should care about this because it's happening rapidly. So I'm sorry. People should care about this because it's happening rapidly, and it makes a difference. So currently you have more women earning college degrees, either on the bachelor or master's degree level, than men. You have more women than men opening small and medium businesses. And you have about 80% of consumer purchases in the United States driven by women. Women are at the table today, they are making the decisions, and they are part of the relevancy of the financial world, whether that be philanthropic causes and where dollars are going towards, whether it be their local philanthropies or whether it be larger philanthropies that benefit the world and the larger themes that we're seeing around poverty, around water, lack of water usage, around population growth, but also around investment trends and the overall broader discussion of ESG investing. So investing in companies that are thoughtful about human capital, are thoughtful about essentially using or having women in their organizations at all levels so that they can benefit from what is now that increased wealth holder stake that women have from a purchasing standpoint, but also from a productivity standpoint, which they bring to not only the philanthropic world, but also to the organizations they work for.
Thanks for that. Carolann,
Yes.
you work with some very wealthy families. I believe you said $25 million and up
Yes.
is your average family. What's exciting in this space when it comes to women? What are you seeing?
Well, I guess what I'm seeing is that more women are taking responsibility for their wealth, that they are working with their advisors to feel empowered, that they are actually willing to come to the table more than they were previously, and actually have conversations with their advisors about what's important to them, and really not be afraid to speak up and say, this isn't what I want. I want someone, really the issue is how an advisor talks to a woman. And the communication style that an advisor needs to use with a woman is different than the communication style an advisor needs to use with a man. And women are now demanding that if my husband's advisor isn't talking to me and understanding me, then I'm going to go somewhere else. So they're taking more charge. They have to, because they're, like everyone on this panel has said, they're being left with all this money.
That's a great point. I want to get to the communication style in a little bit, but I'm also wondering, following up on that, among the wealthier folks, is there anything generationally different? So are the older generations still a little bit less likely to take hold of that wealth, or not so much anymore?
You know, it's interesting because everyone asks me, well, why are you still talking to women about or trying to educate women around things that they should know? Well, because a lot of times patriarchs will take control and not allow their wife to come to the table. Okay, and we had this conversation, and when I was telling Veronica about this, she said, "Well, is that all the older women?" And I said, "No, not at all. You know, if a patriarch decides that this is his to do, and that his wife doesn't need to worry about it, lots of times that's still happening, and it doesn't matter what the age is. Women may take up a different side of the family dynamic, dealing with children, raising the children, keeping the house going, dealing with philanthropy maybe, whereas he's worried about the investing. And that's a real issue because they're not prepared when they need to take control.
I can give you a war story on that one. I know a patriarch who, again, said, "Oh, honey, you don't have to worry about it. Everything is fine." And he thought, like many patriarchs do, that he was never going to die. They absolutely think this is not going to happen to them because they can control everything. So this poor man did pass away suddenly of a heart attack. And his wife, you know, took her quite a while to actually even get into the accounts because the passwords were not even where she could access them. But she did finally get into the accounts with the death certificate. And lo and behold, he had everything. And this was just as the crash was happening in 2008. He had everything in stocks and in high velocity trading because he thought he was going to live forever. And so she was faced with a portfolio that was completely inappropriate for their family because this guy had never let her come to the table. So this stuff is still happening today.
Yikes, that's quite a story. Any other war stories from the panel, Tyler?
Well, I think that you have two different types of I classify two different types of wealth in women. One being inherited wealth, and then the other being self-made wealth. I think that the two need to be treated differently, slightly. I've noticed that when you come to the table and you have inherited wealth amongst women, and you're discussing what to do with that wealth, the women normally, in that situation, don't feel a sense of empowerment. And I think that this has been ingrained in these types of discussions because we're not having advisors out there having thoughtful conversations and having the conversation with the woman at the table just as they would with the male. And so I think the first step is treat the woman like the male, because guess what, males? There are going to be more women in control of more wealth in the next 5 years in America than there are males. We're about to go through what is going to be the great wealth transfer of $40 trillion or so, and 50% of that is going to be passed down to women. So it's a matter of, with that first group of inheritors, of having the discussion of, these are your options. This is how you can get involved. What do you do currently in terms of being involved with your community? 4 out of 5 women will choose where they're going to put their money philanthropically based on personal involvement. So having a discussion around, what are you involved with? How can we deploy cash in a way, and how can we bring you to the table from an investment decision or an allocation perspective as to where do you want that money to go? And just starting to have educational conversations, treating them as if they are that person who is making the decision, because they are. And then with somebody who has actually earned the money themselves, I think you see that there is the idea of protecting that money, giving it towards causes that are going to continue to progress the social agenda, and complete and utter, I would say, commitment to being involved in the community from a corporate level, and also from a community engagement level. War stories, I would say, is what do you do with that money when you get to the table and you have generations of folks who have money? Is what do you do with that money now, and how do we spread the wealth? And it's really just a matter of listening and saying, if we have 10 people at the table, what are you interested in? What have you currently given to, or what have you given to in the past? What would you like to give to in the future? How would you like to protect your wealth, or how would you like to grow your wealth? And then going from there, open up the conversation, talk about the issues. Women care about values.
Values are important. Listening is key. Carolann, any war stories?
Yes, I actually have a client who knew he was going to die very, very soon, and rather than plan ahead and have his wife at the table, he just hired an advisor. He hired us. And shortly after he hired us, he died. And his wife was obviously devastated. And besides having to deal with the fact that she lost her husband, she now had to deal with the fact that she had no idea how much money they had, how much money she was spending, whether or not she could continue to live in her home, okay? This woman was in a panic. It was horrible. He tried to prepare for her by having control up to almost the moment he died. Rather than bringing her to the table sooner, rather than having an advisor at the table sooner and working with her, he thought he was protecting her, but he wasn't.
How can advisors do a better job of empowering women so they're not finding themselves in that situation? Obviously, there's only so much you can do if there's family dynamics going on. The patriarch doesn't want to give up control. But given those constraints, is there anything an advisor could do? Carol?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that an advisor can do. Even if the patriarch doesn't want his wife at those conversations, he will allow her to go to lunch, typically. So take the lady to lunch.
Yes.
You know, you can give her a copy of my book if she really doesn't know anything. We have over 60 female experts in that book talking about every aspect of wealth management. But we called it Pearls of Wisdom because women typically don't like to use financial language, but they do love jewelry. So we talk about financial matters in a very layman's language, and I think that's very important. Women are very smart. They can learn everything about finance, but don't start talking about the standard deviation of the portfolio. The eyes will roll back in their head. They will look at their phone and wonder when they can get out of there. So we need to learn to speak to people in plain language. This sort of language that's very obfuscating, that's very confusing, is not necessary. I've sat in meetings with women. I can give another war story of when I was with a family where there was billions of dollars and the children had been raised to shop at thrift stores because they were so afraid of spoiling these children that they never let them know anything. And then the children inherited billions of dollars. This was such a shock to their system. And literally, there's a gesture that women often make, which is this. I can't handle it. Don't talk to me about it. I don't know what to do. As Carolann said, there's just complete overwhelm. But that same woman who was going like this, with a lot of education and hand-holding and taking her to meetings and explaining to her and forcing the portfolio managers to use plain language, she was able to start participating within about a year very, very accurately in discussions around what was going on with her wealth. So I think language is very important. I think women, for example, are very interested in how the money is going to affect the family. So it's not so much about the standard deviation of the portfolio, or whether there's alpha being generated and all of the things that men get very excited about in a portfolio. It's really about how are our family going to be affected? Is our family protected? Does this make sense? That's a very different conversation. It's a holistic conversation. Money is part of a bigger picture, whereas for men, portfolios are looked at in isolation. So is this a cool portfolio? Is my portfolio bigger than my friend's portfolio? Is it making more money than his portfolio? That's a very different type of conversation. Also, this I think the ladies in the room will like, and the guys may be surprised at, but there is a syndrome called testosterone poisoning. And this was tested at the London School of Economics, and we have it in our book. When guys trade and take risks trading, they get a surge of testosterone, which makes them feel good, seriously. And that makes them want to trade more. Now, what do we have on Wall Street as traders? A bunch of 20-year-old guys with a lot of testosterone. So the more they're trading, the better they feel, the more they want to trade. Women do not get affected by testosterone in the same way when they trade. So women actually are more rational portfolio managers in general because they don't have this biological surging of hormones going on every time they trade. So things like that help women to understand that, in fact, they are naturally very good rational investors. It's just like when you go to a car dealership, the man likes the shiny car that makes a lot of noise. The woman is asking about the safety features and the miles per gallon of the fuel efficiency. Very different animals. And so education, speaking plain language, take them out to lunch, get them out of the office, and don't use the word standard deviation.
Those are great tips. I think we should say, and I appreciate all those tips. I think any discussion like this, whether you're talking about women or men, there's going to be some generalizations. So obviously we want to note that there's exceptions to all of these rules. These aren't rules. These are just observations. We're not trying to bash anyone. I'm very pro-guy. So I just want to say that outright. And I'm very happy for the men who are here. So thank you for that.
And I love my boyfriend.
That's all right. I love my husband. Tyler, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I'm not. I don't want to make you a spokesperson, but I might because you're our guy. Why don't you think more guys are here?
You know, it's interesting that you ask that because I have, as I do whenever I'm at an event like this, I look across the room, and this is probably the first event that I've been at where there are more females than males, and so that is one, remarkable, and two, is relieving in some ways because I got to tell you, I'm sick and tired of walking into a room of all males.
All right.
I mean, if we want to talk about diversity of thought and how that translates into what to do with money, there's clearly no diversity of thought when you have a room full of men or just a room full of women. This is a nice mix. Now, I will say one thing: I'm not a biologist. I do like trading. I am a portfolio manager.
Of course, yeah, that's a good thing.
What did I say?
Now, at the same time, I will say this, is that I'm not sure I fall into that bucket, but I do agree that we do need to transition and take that bucket and kind of just give them a smack on the head, because it does still exist out there. And so for the male advisor, I think it is a bit more difficult to have the conversation with the female who is either inheriting money or who has built up, because we now have, since 1982, more women who have graduated college than men in the United States. They have risen through the ranks. There are certain companies that are embracing this and now have, I'll just give you an example, Starbucks Corporation, 52% of their vice presidents are women. I happen to think Starbucks is a great corporation. Maybe there's something there, maybe there isn't. But you know, people are smiling at that company. Their balance sheet looks good. They're doing well. Sorry, I'm talking about standard deviation now. But to that point is, it's difficult for a male to have the conversation. Male or female, though, don't start to have the conversation when something happens. Because, I mean, if you're an advisor, right, it's hard to trust your advisor in the first place. But an advisor who's there to talk about issues that matter because they've listened and they've heard what the female and the male in the room have to say about what they're currently doing in their lives, whether it be at lunch, etc., or your annual or semi-annual meeting that you have with your client, etc. If you start to have the conversation, start to bring the kids into the conversation about some of the philanthropic causes that they can support, talk about ESG investing overall. If you want to talk about it with the womenomics theme at play, do that. If you want to talk about it with the environmental theme at play, do that. But it's a way, people can't talk standard deviation. They can't talk returns. Males, yeah, they care about looking at their balance sheet at the end of the day, and they care, I guess, if it's bigger than somebody else's. But at the same time, everybody is going to start to listen, including the males, when you talk about how this womenomics theme is actually translating into what some are showing over the past 20-year period. I believe it's a Harvard Business School study that companies that are thoughtful and have women at all levels of their management have done 18 to 67% better than their peers. And that data continues to feed in, continues to prove the thesis that companies aren't just their balance sheet anymore. Companies are a personality, right? And so you can have a conversation around that. But start having the conversation now, so in 5 to 6, 7, 8 years from now, when that generational wealth transfer occurs, or when the patriarch dies, people are prepared, the women are prepared to be able to know what to do with that money. They know where it is, where it's been, children are prepared, including female children, it's a great opportunity, but you got to start now.
Right, they might be less likely to walk out the door if you start early. Carolann, any
Yes.
tips on empowering women?
Yes, I would like to add to Carol's comment about things that you can do to bring the women to the table. The way GenSpring works with clients is we focus on families and not just their financial capital, but their non-financial capital, who they are, what they know. So the family dynamics, the family governance, also the planning around their estate planning, communicating intentions. The way to empower women is to have them part of the conversation. Have some other events where women are invited. That's why we have a Women in Wealth initiative. We have a separate retreat just for our female clients. We're doing one this weekend because women, we found, won't in most cases ask questions in mixed company. They feel intimidated. And they like to learn from each other. They're very collaborative. So back 20 years ago, before, when our firm was founded, we started having women's retreats, just meetings for women. That empowers them because they learn from each other, and they feel that they have a community. So have events, plan on topics that they're interested in. Usually it's, how are my children going to be impacted by this wealth? Money and relationships. I have money, my friends don't. How do I deal with that? I mean, those kinds of conversations definitely will make women feel more comfortable. And of course, have educational programs around investing. They don't have to be talking about standard deviation, but they can give them the basic knowledge they need in order to understand their portfolio allocation. Mm-hmm. Those are the kinds of things I think you can do to empower women.
Carol, I speak to a lot of advisors. Many of them are men, and they say, some may really want to tap into the female market more than they already do, want to connect with these women more than they already do. Mm-hmm. But I've heard from folks that sometimes they just get nervous. They think women, they might think emotions. How do I handle this? How do I deal with this? And we talked before, and you said, it's about emotions, but it's not about emotions.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said, women are actually much more rational investors than men are. They really like information. Women are much more likely to change their mind when they get additional information. Think about driving experiences with your guys. They will also trade less than men do. Female hedge fund managers actually, during the crisis, had twice the performance with half the standard deviation than the male hedge fund managers. So I think if men get over this idea that women are kind of emotional and don't know what they're doing and aren't very smart about money, if they can get over this idea by really absorbing what the facts are about women and investing, this can help them to start becoming better communicators.
You had given some tips also when we spoke about, maybe a man should shadow a female advisor or ask you questions.
Yes, that's right. Thanks for reminding me, Veronica. One of the things I said is I have never been asked by a male advisor, how do I talk to women? Which is kind of funny considering that I wrote a book about how to talk to women about money. So for the guys, go to the women in your firm who are successful and just ask them to help you. Can I be with you when you're talking to your female client? Can I role play with you? Will you role play with me so that I can learn what to do and what not to do? You have to kind of go back and retrain yourself because, in defense of the guys, I started my career in Wall Street in the 80s. There was a certain way that you spoke about money, and there's a certain way you spoke about portfolios, and that was how you were trained. So if you're a 50-year-old guy with a great client base, you've been doing something the same way for 30 years. Now you have to learn to do something new. It's time for you to retrain yourself, to go back to school and learn this new communication style so that you can be effective with this up-and-coming group of wealth holders. So it's back to school time. It's the fall. It's a good time to do it. And you have all around you the women like Carolann and others, Deborah Brodheim, who's here in the audience, my friend Inga Ginsberg, who at 93 is probably the oldest wealth advisor in the room. These women have tremendous experience, and you can just ask them to help you. Women are actually very likely to help if asked.
I'd like to just plug this book. It's called The $14 Trillion Woman. It's written by Barbara Kay. It's actually, she writes it and says it's really for men because it teaches men how to talk to women. It's a great book. It's a very easy read, and it tells you all about how to connect with women, how you need to change your communication style. She actually says, women who read this, you probably know it already. So it comes natural to us. So I really think that it's a good guide for anyone who's interested in learning more how to do this.
Thanks for that. One of the other issues I often hear from advisors is that women may be interested in the financial planning. However, they find that they don't have time, and time is a huge constraint. So I'm wondering, how can an advisor help women create that time to do this? Carolann?
Well, usually we actually run our schedule around the client. So if a client wants to meet in the evening or early in the morning or on a weekend, we fit our schedule to them. That's one of the things that we do. And we actually try to just let them know that this is important and that it is something that you need to put time to. Women, especially with young children, are harried. They're trying to raise their children. They put everybody else first. Well, making them aware of that at some point, this needs to be put first because you're going to be in control of this wealth. You're going to most likely outlive your husband. That you need to make this time, that it's really important, and be flexible as an advisor to fit into their schedule.
I think also what's important is to have a great team. So in my business, I put together virtual teams for families and for women. So the great accountant, the great estate planner, the fantastic portfolio manager, the fantastic tax advisor, the fantastic philanthropic advisor like the Jewish Communal Fund. So when you have a team around you and you learn to trust those people and you get the right experts for all the different things that you're doing, your time gets freed up because you can delegate to these various experts the piece of your life that needs handling. So for example, I used to do all my own bookkeeping, God help me, for my business because I just was not a delegator, but I found the most amazing bookkeeper, and she balances everything twice a week, and 8 hours freed up from not having to do that myself. So finding a good bookkeeper, we often tell people, is number one, just so you can literally start to get on top of your expenses and your spending. One of the things that women worry about is, can I afford to buy this? Can I afford to do that? Well, if you don't have a budget to start, you can't really properly manage your portfolio. So all investment and wealth management, in my opinion, starts with budgeting. When I worked at the Rockefeller family office, John D. Rockefeller they have in the family archives wonderful accounting books from the very first paycheck that he made. He gave money to charity, and he also wrote down everything he ever spent. And look where the family is today. So teaching women how to budget, or getting a bookkeeper in there to budget so they know what they're spending. Then we can go to Tyler and say, okay, here's what the money is that we need to manage. The money that we need for expenses, here's the money that we can put aside for long-term investing. Until we know what our expenses are, we can't start to do that. So very basic things. Many, many wealthy people have no idea what they're spending, and this makes them extremely nervous. There's always this low-level anxiety underneath everything else that they're doing.
I actually had a woman who was spending so much that she was going to run out of money, and she had no idea. Okay? This is the first meeting I have with her. What did I have to do? I had to tell her that she was spending too much money. Think about that conversation, okay? First time I met her. It was not an easy conversation, but I had to do it. I couldn't let her continue to do that. So, it's really important that women know whether or not they can spend the money that they're spending. So I agree with Carol. Understanding your budget and understanding your goals and objectives is key before you can start talking to them about investing their money.
Did you deliver that news the same way you would have delivered it to a man? You're spending too much.
Probably. I basically said to her, explained to her, this is what you have. This is what you're spending. If you continue spending it this way, you're going to run out of money in so many years. So let's look at what you're spending and talk to her about what she was trying to do. I probably would have talked to a guy the same way.
Same way. I'm curious if any of you have a horror story from a client in terms of what they've heard the treatment they've gotten from from a male advisor who didn't understand the unique dynamics of being a woman and how they need to hear things or how they want to be treated. Anything that we need to know about that we want to make sure we don't do ourselves with women clients?
Well, I have a story of a woman I met actually at a conference, and she was sort of casually telling me about her portfolio manager, Tyler. And she said, I want a socially responsible portfolio, but my advisor has put Exxon stock in my portfolio, and I specifically asked him not to put in fossil fuels. And I said to her, well, why are you still with him? Fire the man. Let's get somebody else in there. And she, at that point, this was about 5 or 6 years ago, did not have the strength to say, you're fired. She needed to watch more Donald Trump so that she could learn to say, hey, if I'm telling you something and you're absolutely ignoring my instructions, this is why we now have something called a written investment policy statement that we hand to the portfolio manager, and we tell the guy or the girl, this is what we want in the portfolio, because there are lots of portfolio managers out there who still are blithely ignoring verbal instructions from their clients about what they want. So you have to write down your portfolio requests. I would also like to support Tyler in the sense that 76% of women and 84% of millennials all are extremely interested in impact investing, socially responsible investing. This is a huge sea change. And this is something that is very much tied to the shift to women. So the street is completely unprepared for this shift in interest from hedge funds, let's say, to impact and ESG type investing. But it's coming. And millennials are even more adamant, and guess who they're learning it from? They're learning it from their mothers. So as we see this shift in wealth, we're also going to see Tyler getting a lot more business, because this is what women want.
Good news for Tyler. Tyler, would you agree with that in terms of the shift in that this, well, you're hopefully get more business, but in terms of the shift in how the market may not be prepared for this shift?
Excited about my job security.
Good for you. Glad.
I mean, this is huge. It's not just momentum. It's real. It's not going to just be ESG investing as this separate entity that people kind of still frown upon and say, well, it's the old SRI investing, right? Socially responsible investing, where we're just excluding things. Instead, you're asking additional questions on top of fundamentals or things that we've normally looked at as portfolio managers. These are the things, these additional things that will give a company a personality, like either trusted friend or serial killer, that gives you an idea of, well, what is this company like? How do they give back to their community? How do they treat women? Women are educated. They sell probably 50% of their goods and services to women. Well, but their board is only 20% women. Their upper management, middle management is only 20% women. How are we really capturing? And this goes back to the conversations that advisors should have with women and men. Is if you're only having conversations at a table with men, you're not capturing, or you're not going to get value from that, and you're going to lose. And so this is, to advisors, I would say this, is that if you ever go into a room next time, just pay attention as you go into a room of 10 or 12 people, right, the average size of a boardroom. And if you ever get the chance to be the one or two men in the room, and have 8 to 10 women, how does that feel? Do you feel like you can say something? Do you feel like you have a voice? Are you a little bit timid? And so I want to, first of all, it's never going to happen that you're going to be in a room where there's 10 women and 2 men, right, which is sad. But just think about a situation where you're a bit uncomfortable because you're not the majority anymore. This is what women are dealing with every day when they're having these discussions, or they're being ignored by their advisors or by people who are making investment decisions with them. So if you're the person who is going to step up to the plate and understand, even if you can't really understand it right now, if you can work with, shadow a female advisor as she goes out and talks to women, ask the questions about what's going on with this population. Because this population, in 10 years from now, is going to have more wealth than men. and it's exponentially growing. So really, men are going to be the minority in just a few short years. That's a paradigm shift that we need to prepare for today. So I don't have many war stories, by the way. So, as an ESG manager, people generally come to me already ready to have the conversation around what they want to do with their money.
Gotcha. Carolann,
Yes.
trends in philanthropy among women in that very wealthy set that you work with. What are you hearing?
How do I make a difference? How do I measure the difference I'm making? I believe women are more intimately involved in the charities that they are actually giving to. They want to be sure that their dollars are making sense, and also that they have a goal in mind, so that they actually develop a philanthropic mission statement. What does my family want to achieve with our wealth besides passing it to the next generation? They actually want to have an impact and identify what that impact is. So I see that happening quite a lot. I have lots of families who have family foundations who actually spend the time understanding their goals and their values and coming up with a mission statement just for their philanthropy.
We've been largely speaking, I think, with the assumption that we're talking about heterosexual couples, matriarch, patriarch. I'm wondering, does the calculus change when you're working with a same-sex couple of wealth? Two women.
No, I think it's in the sense there can be equality or inequality even if the couple is the same sex. I think both women probably like to have a female style of communication as opposed to a male style of communication. But there are power dynamics that go on, God, the dramas of my lesbian friends, between same-sex couples. But I think, to echo what Carolann said, women are very focused on these days on measuring impact in their philanthropy. And what's another interesting trend in the family foundations, as I said, it used to be that the 5% you gave away, you would do philanthropic work with. The 95% that was the bulk of the corpus, you'd invest just to make as much money as possible. Now, the millennial generation in particular, who are coming onto family boards, and the women, are saying, I would also like to see impact in those investments that are sitting there in the family foundation. So that's another big change that's happening. You're seeing not only very strict criteria on who we're giving our money to and how that money is being spent and measuring the impact, but also the assets that are sitting in the family foundation.
Millennials, you mentioned millennials. This is such a hot topic in wealth and in money right now. Wondering, are you working with them any differently, especially female millennials? Carolann, did you want to take that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They like to communicate a lot differently than older individuals, and that's something that we need to really focus on. You know, they're used to having instant information, instant. Okay, so we have to market to them differently. We have to speak to them differently. We have to communicate our ideas to them differently. And you know, attention spans, believe it or not, as a result of these electronic devices that we have, are down to 8 seconds. 8 seconds. That is less than a goldfish. Okay, that's less than an attention span of a goldfish. Okay. So, you know, what do you have to do? Well, you have to get your message out there and get it there quickly, okay? And let them know what you want to accomplish and how you're going to accomplish it. You've got to grab them.
How are you doing that? You're not doing Snapchat, are you? Like, what are you doing?
No, we actually develop programs for our millennials. You know, that things we ask them, what are you interested in? You know, as Tyler said, they're more interested in making a difference in the world. And you know, their biggest question is why? Why are we doing this? And how is it going to impact me and the world? So, you know, you have to take that into consideration when you're talking to them or when you're trying to get them to look at something.
Tyler?
I think that's spot on. My attention span is horrible. But I got to tell you, it's because you really are in today's world. Well, first of all, I'll say this, is that we can thank the millennial generation, and especially the women millennials, for what we are experiencing today in terms of the paradigm shift happening so quickly. It's because of Twitter, it's because of the 24/7 information media cycle that we are able to, well, companies can't get away with what they used to get away
Right.
with. I mean, if you're a poor company when it comes to how you treat your people are going to know about it. And that allows us to, and so, okay, fine, right? We have information now, right? But who cares? Well, guess what? Millennials care. And millennials have parents, and their parents are starting to care. You look at various studies, right? And I've seen studies that range from anywhere from 75 to 80 to 82% of millennials are going to invest with their values, would rather invest with their values. I mean, you even look at Gen X, you look at the baby boomers, all above 50% now. I think that was led by the millennials. It's continuing to grow. You're seeing more transparency of corporations, of 401, of nonprofits, of all organizations, because that's what people are asking for. So I would say this is when you're talking to millennials, you're going to want to give them 1 or 2 pieces of paper. Hit the high level bullet points, right? Nobody wants to get that packet of paper anymore. If they're going to get paper at all, send them electronically. Follow up with them. They have a lot going on, right? They have a million emails. Everybody's got a lot going on, but they have a million emails coming at them, and they're going to pick the one that's most interesting to them first, make it interesting, and make it customized. We talked about this. There's always been a huge gap in, well, family, individual. You said that you wanted to invest in a company that was fossil fuel free, but we actually didn't implement that. What we do on my team is we create and craft what's called a social innovation statement. Tell me if it's a particular entity, right? Let's look at your mission. Let's craft it around that and identify exactly how we're going to invest this money when it comes to ESG factors. I would say we talked about surrounding yourself by a team that's thoughtful, whether that be portfolio managers, a philanthropic team, whatever it may be. You're going to want to have that team in place, do your own due diligence to get that team in place so that you're ready to come to the table with the whole bandwidth of solutions, and you know that those solutions are going to fill a gap in a thoughtful way that addresses today's topics.
Carol, any thoughts on the millennials?
I love the millennials. I just think we have to not blow up the planet in the next 5 to 10 years, and they'll fix everything. And I mean that seriously. I mean, these guys are focused, they are passionate, and they are not willing to tolerate cognitive dissonance. The baby boomers were willing to tolerate a lot of things that didn't make sense to their values, and the millennials are not. They're willing to vote with their feet, they're willing to vote with their money, they're willing to go out there and politically activate when they don't like what's happening. And so literally, watch out. This planet is going to change incredibly in the next 5 to 10 years as they gain more and more power. I love them. And I work with them, and I love their energy, their enthusiasm, and their smarts. And they think of Google as an extension of their brain, so they don't think they need to memorize anything because it's all online. Why do they need to memorize? And they're absolutely right. And just think of how education is going to change. I mean, I just heard the other day the one person's daughter in preschool was asked to go and print out a picture of an apple instead of draw an apple. Now that's a change. And that's what's happening today. So they are the digital natives, meaning that they have always had the internet. They've always had access to global information instantaneously. So as Tyler said, they want transparency. If your values, what the values that you state do not match with your actions, they will slaughter you. There are social influencers out there who have 3 to 5 million followers. And if those social influencers decide that you suck, watch out. Those millennials are going to desert you in droves. So we really have to pay attention to the fact that they're actually an incredibly strict generation. And they're going to hold us to task in a very positive way. Women are very empowered in this generation. We're talking about the fruits of our labors since the 60s. These women are what we've been trying to create, and we did it. We created the women that we wish we could have been when we were young. And it's very exciting. And the men. I think the young men are really brilliant. They're very different than their fathers. They're very inclusive. Look at them. They're all very involved dads. And they are also a much better breed of male than their predecessors.
Do you feel better now?
Save. Well, we're running short on time, so I'm just wondering if you could leave the audience, maybe each of you take a turn at this. Last tips for working with women in wealth, tips for advisors, your best wisdom in this regard.
Do you want me to start?
Sure, go for it, Carolann.
Connect with the women. Connect. Talk to them about what's important to them. Understand their values. Understand that they want to make a difference in the world. That their children are really important, how the wealth is going to impact them. Make sure that you have that personal connection. If you don't have it, they will fire you.
I couldn't agree more with that. If you don't have it, learn how to get it, because you'll become a dinosaur very quickly. I would say that surround yourself with a team that you trust, because while millennials and women in particular, they'll discredit you right off the bat. The first number that doesn't add up, the first thing that you say or that you have published that just isn't true. If they find that out, and they are, you're written off. Mm-hmm. Now, to me, that creates opportunity, right? Because if you're thoughtful, if you've surrounded yourself with a team that's going to be beneficial to them, if you're starting to have those conversations and you're on the progressive end of the paradigm, you're right there to be there for them. And that's exactly where you want to be.
I would say the future is now. This is happening now. Women are empowered now. Millennials are here now. And so it's time to get on the bus and enjoy this new ride, because it's going to bring us to a much better world for everybody.
Exciting time indeed. I want to thank our panel for their great tips. And I'm sure there are some questions in the audience, so we might as well start. Do we have a microphone to pass around? Yeah.
Hi, that was great. Thank you. I'm Lauren Katzowitz-Shenfield from Philanthropy Advisors. I was wondering, with regard to philanthropy in your work, if you see any difference between women and men in wanting to continue their donor-advised fund or family foundation in perpetuity versus sunset and spend down.
I work with a lot of families who have foundations, and if it's really their legacy, and I don't see a difference between men and women. That everyone wants to have a legacy. If they've clearly identified what their mission is within their philanthropy, there's no difference, from my experience, between men and women in terms of wanting that to continue. What I do see is that women want to bring their children to the table probably sooner than their male counterparts. They want them to be involved in the foundation and the family philanthropy. Whereas, again, a general statement, but men want to be more in control. Whereas a woman is more willing to say, look, this could be a teaching tool. This could be a way for our children to learn about finance. The restrictions of having to assess grants and managing how much we're going to give. So I do see women bringing their children to the table sooner.
I had the distinct pleasure of, it was maybe 3 months ago, of going with a family in Vermont, and we had 4 generations there. And the family, I think personally, there really isn't a difference between men and women in that situation as to whether or not you spend it down or whether or not you continue. But I would tell you this, is that the women, I think, are more so in firm control of that money and where it goes from a philanthropic standpoint. I think, there's a misnomer out there that women just don't give as much as men, and that's completely false. So women actually give 156% more than men to philanthropy. So it's a matter of, are the right investment professionals there to have the conversation about what their options are and be able to facilitate that with the family, have a discussion. But realistically, it comes down to the family. I mean, you see a lot of broken families these days. I don't think it's really necessarily an investment. It's not really the advisor doing something right or wrong or steering someone one way or the other. It's a matter of, does the family hate each other or do they like each other?
At the debate yesterday, they all agreed, the 4 men and Hillary, that the big fortunes are a danger, they're immoral, and they have to be destroyed. No, whoever has a big fortune will come to you and say, how do I protect my big fortune? What will you answer?
I think that's an entire seminar, Inga. I think, again, women are thinking long-term about protecting their fortunes. There's trust structures. Carolann's firm very much specializes, and U.S. Trust as well, in helping people figure out how to protect their money. There's a lot of populist rhetoric against wealthy people. I really think wealthy people need a PR firm to start. Everybody should pitch in, because wealthy people do the most for this country for philanthropy, their innovations. I really believe wealth, if you look at most of the great inventions of the day, they're by individuals. Governments can't save this planet. Wealthy individuals and their philanthropy are much more the way that the planet is going to be saved. And we just need some PR for wealthy people, because the rhetoric is, and the popular culture is very unaware of all the good that wealthy people do. And I think if there was more awareness of that, then there would be less of this attack the rich type of rhetoric that we hear currently, and I don't think anything will really happen with all of that. That's just campaign rhetoric, so I wouldn't worry about it.
What other questions? Do you over here?
Hi, Brendan Blaney, Tortoise Investment Management. So one of the things that I would do a lot of work for our firm is recruiting, and kind of had thoughts on attracting female talent to come for your firm would be very interesting for me.
What kind of firm is your firm?
It's an independent advisor.
Mm-hmm. One thing I would say is, and I'm hearing this more from women actually, when they go on a job interview, they want to know if there are other women in senior positions within the firm. Because a lot of firms have, let's say, 50-50 of their classes of women starting out, places like JP Morgan and the training programs, but then when you get to the senior ranks, there's 2 women, less than 5%. And so women are actually getting a little more savvy about that, and they're starting to look at that and say, hey, how come there are no senior women? Don't tell me everybody dropped out to have a baby, because that's not usually the case. Often they dropped out because they weren't being paid the same as the guys once it got to the senior levels. So taking a good look at your board, if the company has some sort of a board or an advisory board, are there senior women on those boards? Are there senior women who are going to be willing to mentor younger women and who actually will be given time to do that? Are there programs for young women so that they can know each other and then help each other as they move up the ranks and get mentored by both men and women so that they can succeed? But women are getting very savvy, and they're avoiding financial services actually in droves, which is not good for us. If you look at college graduates, many of them do not want to go into financial services because they do not want to be treated badly. I had an intern recently from Columbia Business School, and I was absolutely appalled at what Deutsche Bank did to her. I mean, it was just like what happened to me in 1984 at Salomon Brothers when I was the only girl in the M&A department. Nothing had changed. Sexism, she was told she wasn't dressing sexy enough. When she was ill, she was made to feel guilty that she wanted to go to the doctor. She was being worked, 90 hours a week, and this is today. So if your firm has, practices that are inhumane for both young men and women, I don't think many millennials are going to take it anymore. That's why we see the lack of interest in coming into our field. We need to change that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, when I think about talent and bringing in talent into a firm, I think about energy, right? So the technology is there. The talent of women is there. They're educated. They're, in some cases, way more capable than men, right? Especially to address this market. Would be perfect, right? That's why you're asking the question. But the infrastructure isn't there yet. Maybe it is at your firm, but I would say, have a discussion if it's not there with your firm as to let's build out this infrastructure. Let's bring in some women that could help us at the mid-management level, at the upper management level, all the way to the top throughout the organization, and develop pathways for these women we're bringing in to feel comfortable and to progress upward through the company. If you can't do that, you're probably going to lose the woman after a year or two anyway, and that costs a lot of money. So I would bring that discussion to your company, and then the talent's there.
Hire women to develop programs that will attract more women. Really. Which is basically what everyone said. have someone there who can mentor them along the way. Make them feel that their point of view is important. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal about speaking while female, how if a woman brings an idea to a table, most of the time it's poo-pooed, okay? But a man in the room can bring the same idea to the table and it's accepted. And if the woman argues for her point, she's seen as, a B, all right? Whereas if a man argues for his point, he's like, wow, that's great. So, we have to change the way we actually deal with our female coworkers. And that's something, being aware of it is really also key of it, right? Being aware that you're doing something that maybe isn't helping you attract more women is the step in the first step in the right direction.
And watch out for that company that has already built the infrastructure to attract women talent, because they're going to be way ahead of the game, and in 10 years from now, you're going to see just an absolute monster of a company, just firing on all cylinders.
If someone has a child when they're 30 now and lives to be 90, that child won't receive the money from their estate until they're 60. So can you just talk about the implications of longevity and how it affects planning dynamics in families?
Well, certainly, it's a big issue. I mean, think about it from the insurance industry's point of view. They're having to revise all the tables because when is life insurance actually going to kick in? And portfolio management. I mean, I think families are going to have to realize that they can't just wait and give the money all to the person upon death, even if that's the most tax advantage way. They're going to have to maybe bite the tax bullet and give some money at an earlier age in order for people to have a reasonable lifestyle in their 50s, 40s, and 50s. If, as you say, most people are living to 80, 90, and it will be in the hundreds soon.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what I see happening a lot is the older patriarch is making his grandchildren rich and his children poor. Really, okay? And I agree with Carol, let's not do that. Let's make sure that our children, they grow up with you. They're used to a lifestyle, right? And then they go out on their own and they're poor because mom and dad hasn't given them the money. It's their money, right? It's like, while you're alive, don't you want to see your children be happy and successful? Well, give them, I agree, give some money while you're alive. Don't make your grandchildren rich and your children poor.
I think that's also why we may have seen over the past 20, 30 years that philanthropy has been 2% of GDP. It's remained flat. I don't think if we continue to give the money to our grandchildren, if folks continue to give the money to their grandchildren and skip that middle generation there, you're not empowering them to use that or deploy that capital either to grow it or to benefit various organizations and causes out there. So definitely having the conversation to give money sooner.
You don't want the tax tail to wag the dog.
Right. Hi, Angela DeSimone, Tortoise Investment Management as well. So my question is, sometimes we work with couples where both the man and women are empowered, and sometimes they don't agree on the direction of the portfolio or even how the money is spent outside the portfolio. How do you work with those couples when both parties have very strong ideas and work with them to agree, but still manage communicating to a woman differently than a man?
I think it's about having a conversation where you're trying to find the middle ground, or to have each of them understand the perspective that the other person has. It's all about them gaining a level of communication that enables them to talk to each other about why they feel the way they do. I had a situation where I had a couple who were talking about giving their children allowance, okay? And they were on opposite sides of the spectrum as to what they should do. So we had a conversation. We had them do their money history, understand why they felt the way they did. And I facilitated that conversation so that he could explain where he came from, why his values were what they were. She did the same thing, and you would have been surprised, because they both sat there saying, I never knew that you thought that way. So, you know, facilitating a conversation between them about their goals and their values and their perspective can help with that.
I would also say in the modern age, there's a lot of different models that can work. So it's not necessarily true that couples have to have one portfolio.
True.
Another way to handle this, if they're really power struggling with each other and it's starting to affect their relationship negatively, is to have two portfolios. Have her portfolio for half and his portfolio for half. Let her invest the way she feels she should invest. Let him invest the way he feels he should invest. And then they can have some fun, sexy conversations about who's doing better. And a lot of couples will have one account, for example, one checking account where they both contribute to for mutual expenses. This is particularly true with blended and second and third families. And then I have my portfolio management over here, you have yours over there. And guess what? The fights go away. So if there's no compelling reason that they have to do it together, that could be a bit old school. An empowered woman who has a strong belief in how she wants to manage her portfolio may really feel more comfortable having it separated. And there's no reason. It doesn't negatively affect the relationship. In fact, it may enhance it, because you've gotten rid of an area of power struggling that is not necessary. It's sort of like housework. Rather than fighting over the vacuuming, hire a maid. You know, it's just, you know, you don't want to create strain in your relationship. 60% of divorces are caused by money issues. It is the leading cause of divorce. So if you're struggling with your partner and having a lot of money fights, take it seriously, because this is one thing that will lead to divorce quickly. And we can simply rearrange how finances are handled and take away a lot of that power struggling and problems.
I'm thinking of Home Depot on a Sunday right now, and a couple just arguing, which you see all too often, and you're just hoping that person from Home Depot is going to give them some direction. So, or you just leave aisles and come back around. But my point with that is that you can't give the whole gamut of solutions. Listen, understand sort of where they're going, what they're looking at, facilitate the conversation between the two of them, but also present solutions to them and keep them on track. Drive the conversation in a thoughtful way. Be prepared to do that. Versus if you give them more and more options, right? It's just gonna take off, and you're never gonna get to kind of that end point.
Any last questions? Well, I just want to say excellent questions from the audience, and before I turn it over, I want to say thanks again to Carol, Carolann, and Tyler for their thoughts.
Well, I'd like to thank Veronica, Carol, Tyler, and Carolann. Fantastic panel. For me, it was an eye-opener. I've got to do something very differently personally today. And no, I'm serious. It was terrific, and I think a lot more people, not just advisors, should hear what they had to say. It was very well done. At the risk of getting Tyler angry at me, I just want to point out that at the Jewish Communal Fund, 80% of our senior executives are women.
All right.
Tyler should be 50-50, right? But again, thank you to the panel. This was terrific. Thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions regarding the Jewish Communal Fund, a number of us are here for a while. Please feel free to ask. Thank you.